All right. Welcome to another edition of Joe and Tom's Great Music Show here. Um,
It's like Bill and Ted's Great Adventure. Is that what it is? Still around.
I guess. I don't know. Anyhow, folks, yeah, here we are again. We got a little different kind of a format today. Tom, why don't you give it? This was your great idea, and I really loved it. Why don't you let them know what we're going to talk about today?
Well, actually, I think it was a week ago today. I know by the time this is airing, it won't be a week from this. But I was in Cleveland, Ohio, at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony. And the 2021 class, I mean, honestly, very diverse bunch of musicians. I think that they did some good things in terms of who they chose, and of course, being a huge Todd Rundgren fan, I was over the moon that he was in. Probably more so than Todd was happy to be in, but it kind of led to the discussion. What are some of the bands that probably should be in the hall? It's a discussion that happens all the time, and I think people find it interesting because with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's not like the Baseball Hall of Fame. I mean, Baseball Hall of Fame or Football Hall of Fame, it's touchdowns, it's home runs, it's strikeouts, it's,
Hmm.
whatever. That there's these tangible statistics that kind of let people know that you probably should be in the Hall of Fame. Whereas with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the criteria is a little bit more subjective, so to speak. But I think I can make the case for these five acts, and hopefully somebody from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction committee is watching, and they're going to say, you know what, this Tom and Joe. I mean, these guys need to be on the committee. We're just going to let them start picking who's in the Rock Hall.
All right, yeah, this was a good one. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of the Rock Hall. I feel there's many people in it right now that shouldn't be in it, and there's many people that should be in there that aren't. So it's like, it's really one that makes me, I'm not a big fan of the Hall of Fame to begin with, and there's a lot of reasons why. I don't like the layout of it. I don't like they allowed other genres to come into it. It's not a music Hall of Fame, it's a rock and roll Hall of Fame. So there should be no rappers in there. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to defend anybody, but it should be more cut and dry about what type of genres you allow into it. Had they done this back when they first started allowing people who shouldn't be in there, maybe some of these other people would be in, because then, it would leave the door open and more of a chance for some of these folks. So anyhow, enough of me about ranting. Let's just get into it. We're gonna start going off on the people that we
Oh,
feel should be in there and then aren't. Let's give you throw out your first choice and we'll see what we got here.
yeah, here's one I think we're both going to agree on. And I will say, I'm not a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame hater. I feel like I'm the only one that has anything to do with the music media that's willing to say that. I love the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I love the museum. I love the concept. I don't have a problem with rap stars being in there. And even before Todd Rundgren got in, I was
Mm.
still okay with the organization. So here we go. Numero uno is a band that you and I have discussed before. They've always given us the best at times. They make us want to sail away, and you're fooling yourself if you don't think they should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. See what I did there?
Yeah, exactly.
It sticks, baby. Come on, let's be honest. There's an entire generation of music fans that grew up listening to Styx that created the soundtrack of an entire generation. And then if you just say, "Oh, Styx was a band for its time," and there's only a certain group of people that love them. Big Daddy, man, you've seen the movie Big Daddy. I mean, the movie's
Hmm.
all about it. It Styx is all through it. You had South Park. Styx was referenced in there. I think their songs have held up very well. They're a great band, and I think maybe the knock is, well, they were just a commercial band. They didn't really do anything that was innovative. I'm like, are you kidding? I mean, what kid didn't go to a Styx concert and want to be a rock star after that show? They were a great band, and I think the biggest problem with Styx in terms of getting inducted is they're not really a flashy choice. They didn't have the backstory of all the groupies backstage and the drugs and all that other stuff. And I mean, I'm sure they had some stories from the road of a little bit of excess, but for the most part, Styx was about the music. Great band. They should be in. If Journey's in, Styx should be in, man. Sorry, because I mean, I think if nothing else, they're on a level playing field. Same with Rush. Rush obviously has a lot more longevity, but certainly I think that Styx is a band that I kind of scratch my head, and I hope they get in. And I hope they get in, and they have a reunion on stage with Dennis DeYoung and
You
Tommy
would.
Shaw and JY. So there you go.
Yeah, Styx is definitely one of my five. You got it right. Yeah, five platinum and multi-platinum albums in a row. Not
Yeah.
too many bands can do that. You started off with the Grand Illusion, triple platinum, Pieces of Eight, triple platinum. Cornerstone only went double platinum, even though it had the number one song Babe on it. And then they came right back with their number one album, Paradise Theater, triple platinum. Kilroy Was Here, as bad as that album actually is as an overall album, it still went platinum. So you
Because
can't
it's
fault
not
them.
that bad of an album, Joey.
Well, we already went through our
No,
album rankings.
because Styx was willing to take chances on Kilroy, and Dennis gets picked on for Kilroy. But listen, I interviewed Dennis about this, and he gave me an interesting perspective. He said, "Hey, man, Tommy and JY didn't have much else to bring to the table, and I get it. Everybody was burned out. That's in many ways a Dennis solo album. But you know what? That was a heck of a run, like you said. I mean, how many bands? I mean, you got CCR, you got the Beatles, you got a few bands that were over a 4 or 5 year period able to crank out a ton of great songs, and Styx falls squarely in that category.
Oh yeah.
They need to be in there, and I'll make the trip to go to that induction ceremony. In fact, Styx, if you're listening, I'm the guy you want to induct you, okay? Because Joey will just talk crap about Kilroy's here. I won't even do that, okay?
All right, so we agree on Styx.
Yeah.
Let me throw out another one because it's kind of ties into what you just said. I'm going Queensryche. Um, Not too many people would probably agree with that choice, but you got to hear me out on that. Here's another band that made five solid albums right in a row, and just every album just seemed to sell more and more. They just went right off with their initial album, The Warning, Rage for Order, and then all of a sudden they hit pay dirt with Operation Mindcrime. Um, that's the album that really broke them. And then from there they had the Empire, which was a huge, huge album for them. And then you follow that up with Promised Land. Now I don't know how big of a Queensryche fan you are, or how you are with them. But over the time, Empire went triple platinum. Operation Mindcrime was their first platinum album. Even the Promised Land album made platinum before their downward spiral. But it seems like that's one band that really, for that 5 album period, they just were on top of their game, and they went from an opener to a major headliner where they're headlining Darien Lake, back in the day. So I don't know. They were just one of those bands with this, not one guy really stands out, although, everybody says Jeff Tate, one of the greatest vocalists of all time, powerful voice. But it was just a consistency, I think, that really makes them stand out for me.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Queensryche fan. I mean, I've seen him a few times. I've had the honor of interviewing Jeff Tate. I think you make a great point. I mean, I can't argue against anything that you've said. They're still around. I mean, it's sad. They're kind of the whole family squabble thing. I mean, I don't know why they haven't made a behind the music episode, because the whole Jeff Tate Queensryche split, if anything, is innovative in terms of how to completely mess up a band by bringing in the business executives, because that's ultimately what happened. But yeah, Jeff Tate, man, what a front man. I mean, that guy, wow. And then I haven't seen Todd Latore. I think that's how you pronounce it, but he obviously had some big shoes to fill, and he's managed to kind of do that. And then Jeff's doing his own thing, very similar to a Styx situation, in that you have a guy that's a lead singer that's a very prominent part of the band, and he's doing his thing, and then the band's still doing their thing, and everybody seems to still be going to the shows, and everybody's making money. But man, you kind of, as a party that always wishes that the the major group would get back together and kind of resolve their differences. And yeah, I mean, it's another, again, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame doesn't always do that in terms of bands getting back together to perform, but it does give them an opportunity to at least close out on a happier note than some of them have.
All right. Who do you got up next for you?
Well, you know what? I say this, there's no one like you, Joey. No one like you, because when
Mm.
the winds of change are coming, you always call me to do one of these video shows. You see what I did there?
Mm-hmm.
It's the Scorpions. Now you say to myself, why the Scorpions? Now, the Scorpions, German rock band. I mean, honestly, these guys, I don't know. Their sound is very unique, but certainly there were bands that followed them that they had a great influence on. But let's talk about cultural influence. I mean, that "Winds of Change" song really just resonated throughout the world and had an impact on the political situation at the time. And you look at, I mean, those types of things don't happen very often. You think of like Ohio by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Mm-hmm.
That came out at a time when there was a great political upheaval. Winds of Change was a little bit more of kind of the optimistic song that you know helped bring about some winds of change in their native land of Germany, and pointed to what was going on. And I think it's an important song. And I think that they're an important band because a lot of bands kind of after them took their sound and expanded upon it.
Yeah, they almost made my list, but unfortunately they didn't. That's definitely one band that I was kind of teetering on about putting in for sure. Don't get me wrong. I've seen these guys many times, and believe it or not, they are just unbelievable in concert, even to this
Yeah.
day. You'd figure, as they get older, that would actually hinder them, but no, they still are putting on phenomenal shows right now. Klaus Meine, Freak of Nature, with that vocals of him, man. It's amazing how great he still sounds after all these years. And they actually got a new album coming out, so that'll be interesting to see how well that will be doing too.
Yeah, and they're another band that knows how to. I think they did a farewell tour, and then they're still around. So those are my favorite kinds of bands.
Yeah, they actually, what they did was they announced like a 3-year, 3-part farewell tour, kind of like what Deep Purple did. And then by the time they got halfway through the middle of the third year, they said, well, you know what? We're having too much fun to stop now. Let's just take it as it comes. So they carried on, which was great because I got to see them an extra couple times already. And let's hope we can get one more time in there before things happen here.
All right.
Hey,
Well,
good
you're up,
choice.
sir.
Good choice. Well, I'm going with like they say, you've got another thing coming.
I do.
And if you live after midnight, you just never know. But yeah, Judas Priest. Now, how can they not be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Tell me. They actually pioneered heavy metal. They
Yeah,
always talk
I mean,
about all these. Yeah,
what I think the big thing is that you probably got a whole bunch of the cattle industry that's hell bent for leather, and they don't want them. They don't want them in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
yeah, but I mean, you can go up and down. The career highlights of Judas Priest. Yeah, obviously, the band's gone through a lot of changes over the time, but
Yeah,
back in their heyday, they were firing out all these great albums, album after album, and all these great tours, and
yeah, yeah.
just
Well, let's not forget that whole. I mean, I know you're a little younger than I am, but let me tell you, man, when people would go to see their shows and they would have the motorcycles right up on stage to start the show, that was a show stopping moment. I mean, anybody was talking about that. I mean, they're a band I think that really built their reputation and built their audience just by putting on just a killer live show.
yeah. I mean, I just seen Halford actually, Priest themselves. I seen Halford in action, just a few months ago. Man, he could still sing, man. It's just amazing. I mean, back in the day, when I first seen him back in the mid '80s, I never would have, you picture when these guys are like 60, 70 years old. There's no way they're gonna sound like that. But Halford's one of these guys that have proven me wrong. He still sounds amazing in concert. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and hey, any bald guy with a white beard, I mean, he's okay in my book. So
Yeah, but
All
this.
right, I hope you got a couple of outliers that nobody's gonna predict, because I don't think anybody's gonna see this one coming. Uh, Steve Lukather. That's who I say. Steve Lukather from Toto. I don't necessarily think Toto has to go in, but I think Steve Lukather should absolutely be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, the guy's recorded. I mean, he's on so many iconic recordings. There was a period of time. I mean, you couldn't make a studio album in L.A. without Lukather having to come in and salvage the darn thing, including, of course, his most famous appearance on Thriller. Everybody talks about, Eddie Van Halen's solo work on the Thriller album, but
Mhm.
on Beat It, but it's Lukather that's laying down that beat, and he's an incredible player, and a good dude, and he's still around, and he's put out a ton of work, and he was kind of the guy that helped move Toto along, and Toto had their own set of hits. And I mean, I'm not a huge Toto fan. I mean, I think that most people kind of are in the same category that I am, that they're not a band that you're necessarily going to turn the station if you hear them. I mean, I enjoy their stuff. I'm not heavily into it, but and I would tell you, Lukather's solo work, I think, is in many ways superior to a lot of the stuff that he did with Toto. But
Hmm.
Steve Lukather, come on, man, this guy's if Randy Rhoads could go in with only having recorded 2 albums with Ozzy and the Blizzard of Oz, certainly Lukather should be able to go in for the amount of work that he put out. And I think a lot of guitarists look at a guy like Lukather for just his incredible technique. I mean, I don't know that there's a guitarist that can just play something so perfectly with seemingly such ease.
Okay. Well, good point. I'm not too familiar with his solo career or anything, but yeah, he's definitely a great guitarist. I've seen him in concert before, a couple times, and he's was part of Todd's or not Todd's, but Todd was with him in Ringo's All-Star band, and yeah, I mean, great performer, great guitarist. Can't argue with that choice. All right, so let me throw a name out here for you. This one actually was going to be this is probably my most glaring omission. You know how you mentioned Styx is your top choice. This artist, why she's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and you look at all the other females that are in it, you got to be going, she's not in it?
I
No.
bet you we got the same one too, because but go ahead.
All right, I'm talking about the lady who nobody does it better than her.
Nobody does it better. Carly Simon.
Carly Simon.
Okay, I didn't see that one come.
No, but 2 Grammys, an Academy Award, a Golden Globe Award,
Yeah.
you know, 3 platinum studio albums, #1 album, #1 song, multiple top 10 songs. Pretty much was in the limelight from like 1970s all the way through the 80s, in the mid 90s. She constantly was putting music out and never stopped. The only thing that I think might lead to her downfall just a little was that the fact she didn't like touring, and she never really did a lot of touring.
Yeah.
Very seldom did she ever tour. So but so many artists, Taylor Swift, many more have cited her as an influence, and and if more than anything else, she was one of the first female artists of the 70s, going back to the Anticipation album and all that stuff. I mean, there's just so much great music she's made over the years, whether
Wow.
you're a fan or not, but
Well, it's
there's no.
it's odd. I mean, I was literally about half an hour before we started recording. I was just watching her big interview with Dan Rapper. I mean, I don't know what are the chances of that happening, but because I loved that particular show, and she was talking about the marriage to James Taylor and stuff like that. But that's a great choice. I mean, it's not one I really thought of. And just having been at the induction ceremony with Carole King that was inducted this year, and of course Tina Turner. I mean, we could do a whole episode on just women that really probably should be in, and she's definitely on the list. And the next one that I'm about to say, which is what I thought you were going to say, should be on the list as well. Now, this one's been nominated, and to me, this is about as head scratcher as you get in terms of a female performer. And I mean, it's not as it's even more simple than the difference between fire and ice, you know. And you better run if you don't think that this woman should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She's a real heartbreaker. It's Pat Benatar. I mean, she was like the female vocalist of the year for the Grammys for forever until somebody else came along. I mean, she was a female performer in a male dominated industry for many years. One of the first videos to be on MTV. I mean, her songs dealt with important social issues. I mean, well, I know she's been nominated. I don't like, I don't, this to me, this one's a real head scratcher, or if you want to just call it a no brainer. I mean, Benatar absolutely, without a doubt, should have been in a long time ago. I'll be shocked if she's not in within the next 4 or 5 years, especially with the focus on trying to get more female artists in the hall, which they should.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that choice. I think her and Carly Simon are the two biggest head scratchers
Yeah.
as far as caliber of the performers, like you said there. Yeah, I mean,
How did it
is
take so long for Tina Turner to go in as a solo artist too? I mean, you know, you look at Tina Turner. That's. I mean, I get she
yeah,
went in with Ike, but come on, that's as her as
yeah,
a
I'm
solo
not
artist.
sold how she should have been in as a solo performer, anyways. Really, she didn't really make that many solo albums, and the one was really, really good and did a lot of sales, but. I don't. That's one of the choices where I wouldn't have put her in. She's already in there. Like that's good enough.
Yeah. Well, we could argue that one, but you know. All right, so you're up.
All right. So this is my final choice. Do you still have one more, or are you done
I do have
too?
one more. I do have
Okay.
one more.
All right. So my final choice is that band from Champaign, Illinois.
Oh Lord, I
They're
should have
gonna
put them on my
they're gonna
list.
keep on rolling because that's exactly what they're doing. They're keeping on rolling. They roll with the changes better than anybody. No other than REO Speedwagon. Um,
Yeah, great.
Definitely, that's another one. Like I said, if Journey's in there, REO should be in there, no doubt about it. Journey, REO, Styx, Foreigner, those four kind of stick together because those were like the four bands that were always on the charts in the '80s. They dominated the '80s, late '70s, early '80s. REO Speedwagon, obviously, they were around a long time before they really hit it big. But once they did, that point in time from like 78 all the way up until 87, pretty much when Gary left, Gary was, it seemed like, yeah, that's when the band changed and things kind of, didn't go so good for him as far as they only made a handful of albums after that, not even.
Yeah.
But for the albums that they've made in the High Infidelity, that's unbelievable. Good Trouble, another very underrated album that never really gets mentioned anymore, and then they came back and got another number one song, so they had a number one and then they had another number one. This group is definitely what's your take on REO here?
I love REO. You know, I was just out in Cleveland, as I said, for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. And then I went and saw Todd Rundgren show at the Hard Rock Casino, and they were showing that High Fidelity, they're going out on tour. REO is going out to support the 40th anniversary, I think. And man, I was just thinking, what an incredible album. And what an incredible time to be a young man, because REO is just such a great band. But, you know, I think the thing I really love about REO's story is it's really a story of like a bunch of guys who just never gave up on the dream. You know, I mean, they start out and they just kept keeping on. I mean, how many albums did they have before they hit it with High Infidelity? I mean, Tuna Fish was a fairly
Right.
popular one. The live album was okay. You know, I mean, so they had 4, 5, 6 pretty decent selling albums, but man, they were just one of those bands that another one, kind of like we said about Judas Priest. I mean, they just did it by going out on the road. They put out an album, they come into your town, they blow you off the stage, and then they get out, and then they come back every year. And then each year, more people are there because they go, dude, you should have seen this band REO Speedway. And then the following year, more people wanted to see him. And just such a great live band. And not because there was anything flashy about it. It wasn't like they had this complex stage show with a bunch of pyrotechnics or state of the art lighting. They were a rock band. I mean, they were just a, typical Midwest type thing. Show
Hmm.
up, plug in, crank it out, and do what you got to do. And then on top of that, they managed to somehow become uh, hit makers with some adult contemporary songs, which is that's not easy to do crossover. And maybe some rockers may say, oh, Can't Fight This Feeling is a sappy song, kind of like Styx gets dinged for Babe or whatever. But you know what? I respect an artist that's willing to go out on a limb and put out something that's a little bit different. And if it resonates with more people, then that's cool, man. Because you know what? The more people that love your band, the more people you can, share that love with. So I'm always happy when the band does something like that. But yeah, REO, great band, man. I love those guys. I still listen to them a lot. I got a bunch of their vinyl records. And when I was a young man, I used to do my little parlor trick at high school parties was I would do 157 Riverside Avenue
Oh.
rant from Decade of Rock and Roll from beginning to end, because nobody plays guitar like Gary does, just some good
Oh,
stuff.
that was true. That was for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's funny. Like the breakdown of 157 Riverside Avenue was almost like a rap song, like the whole thing. But that's and again that was just the whole 157 Riverside thing. It was just the way to connect with the crowd, and it was just so wonderful. But yeah, that's awesome. That's a great choice, Joe. You really got my wheels turning, so to speak, for lack of a better term. All right, my final one, and I don't even need to make that much of a case for it. I think it's a little different because I know you got a Buffalo Bills shirt on, I got a Buffalo Bills hoodie on, meaning that we were fortunate enough to be very close to a country that produced some amazing artists, Canada, and there was one that was so important to Canada that us in Buffalo we fell in love with them too because they were just an amazing band, and that's the Tragically Hip. I mean, the Tragically Hip is musically their records are oh my god. I mean, they're like all almost perfect. They were an incredible live band. They developed a very devout following, and they even though they maybe weren't huge in the world, their impact on Canada alone
Hmm.
makes them worthy of induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because they were a very 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 important part of that country's music scene. I mean, just probably this may be a little overblown, but to me they're almost like the Beatles of Canada. And I mean the Beatles of course came from England, but you know, I don't know, man. I just such a great band, and it's a shame that the lead singer has passed away and wouldn't be able to enjoy the induction. But man, that would be I think that would be a great ceremony if you could get the Tragically Hip in and get some guys to get up there and talk about the importance of their music and their legacy.
Yeah, yeah. Can't argue with that one. Like you said, Canada definitely that's one of their big contributions to music. Tragically Hip, right up there with a lot of these other like Rush and Triumph. There's another band that that unfortunately will never probably see a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nomination. But what can you do? Did you have any other bands that you were thinking about talking about? Any
Well,
ma
yeah, Triumph was definitely on my mental list, but I feel like I'm a little too close to them. Like I love them so much. I don't know that I could objectively make the case for them just because I just do love them so much. But yeah, I think again the Tragically Hip and Steve Lukather were kind of the two that I thought, man, it'd be really cool. I think if because the Rock Hall does throw in some people that you don't necessarily think of on
Mhm.
occasion. I think Randy Rhoads this year was a bit of a surprise to a lot of people, but they made a good case for it. Gil Scott Heron, same thing. He was kind of an innovative artist, and I was able to meet him when he was playing at a club that I worked at. But yeah, I mean, you see, a guy like Steve Lukather, Chasm Sultan, who was Todd Rundgren's bass player. Again, somebody that I'm a huge fan of, so I'm not necessarily as unbiased about it. But I think there's a lot of musicians out there like Chasm Sultan or Steve Lukather. These session guys, Lee Sklar,
Yeah.
Waddy Wachtel. I mean, all these guys have played on all these records and were so important to people that are actually in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's kind of a shame that they're not in. I mean, you think about like, you know, a Rod Stewart or an Alice Cooper or any of those other type of performers, and Elton John. I mean, I don't know if Elton John's band went in with him, or he probably went in with Bernie Taupin, but man, there's just a lot of these players that were so important to the scene. I kind of wish that there was a way that the Rock Hall would recognize them. But at the end of the day, the reason that you hate the Rock Hall is the reason that it's popular, and that is that they in many cases make their choice based on what's going to have the largest appeal and the broadest, appeal to people that may potentially want to visit the museum. If it was isolated to just rock and roll, nobody would be there. And I'll tell you, when I was there for the LL Cool J and Jay-Z induction, I mean, there was a lot of LL Cool J and Jay-Z fans that were in attendance and probably went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and museum to tour it, that probably never would have in a million years gone to a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Because like I said, I mean, Jay-Z and LL Cool J are, right, I mean, there ain't much rock and roll there.
Nah, I don't agree. I don't agree. I just don't, I just
Hey
feel
man, it's you know what? It's a tourist attraction first and foremost. It really is. That's what it comes down to. It needs to it needs to make money. That's why they do what they do. Agree with it or not agree with it. I understand where people get offended by some of the artists that they pick. I mean, Dionne Warwick. I mean, if Dionne Warwick got in, I don't know that I could defend that. But
wow.
it's at the end of the day, it's a nice honor for musicians to get, and I think everyone that we mentioned on the list is deserving, and I think it would be great to see them recognized in some way, shape, or form. But you know what? Maybe it comes down to somebody trying to start a museum that really is based on just rock or classic rock. You've got a country music. I'm sure that there's some kind of hip hop. We know we have a Canadian Music Hall of Fame, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame tries to be all things to all people. And that's, I think, where they get themselves into a little bit of trouble and get criticized for it.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll be getting a lot of comments from other people on other artists that maybe we didn't make our list, or maybe some people will actually agree with some of our choices. Well, we'll see. That's our main thing here. We just want to strike up some conversations, get some
Yep.
opinions here, and go from there. So yeah, that's about all we got for this week for this episode, and then we'll be doing a couple other episodes in the future on some other topics, including we can let them know that we're going to be doing our top 10 all-time Styx songs, which that's going to be a great show. I can't wait to get into that
Yep.
one. And we got some more album rankings to get into, and it's going to be some good times. So stay tuned, subscribe to our channel. And other than that, any other last words from you, Thom?
No, I just enjoy these. Hopefully, people out there are enjoying them. And, obviously, if they have topics that they want us to discuss, or hey, man, even if there's a musician, if Steve Lukather wants to join us one of these days, we'd love to have him. Or any
Hey,
musician for that matter, to have these types of discussions. It's so these types of things are meant to be fun, stoke discussion, and not, and be a little more pleasant than having to discuss other things like politics and religion, right?
yeah, exactly. All right. All right. Well, until next time, this is Joe and Thom signing off. Have a great day.
And we're going to keep on loving you.